Hello and welcome to this edition of BOSCA Presents, presented by Mammoth Sports Construction and CEI Engineering. My name is John Hartwell, and I am the designer behind Hartwell Studio Works, a sports branding shop serving the small college athletics market. BOSCA Presents is a monthly series of live webinar conversations featuring athletics leaders discussing topics of importance for the small college athletics community. Our topic today is Keep Chopping Wood, How to Unlock the Potential of Your Leadership, Your Team, and Your Culture, presented by Kevin DeShazo of Culture Wins. Audience participation during this presentation is encouraged, and we'll have opportunity for Kevin to answer your questions during and after the presentation. Please enter your question into the chat box. All of those chat messages do come into me, and I will ask them to Kevin, our guest. A quick reminder that we are recording both audio and video, and both of which will be available later on the web. This edition of BOSCA Presents is presented by Mammoth Sports Construction and CEI Engineering. And before we begin, we will hear from our sponsors, and we'll begin with Brian Morris, the Vice President for Professional and Collegiate Operations at Mammoth Sports Construction. Brian.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's great to be back with everybody. I see a whole bunch of faces that I know and know quite well here in the room. Mammoth is a proud sponsor of the business of small college athletics. We have been for a while. I've been involved with BOSCA for probably, I guess, a decade now almost. And with what Jim and those guys are doing is just tremendous. Also very proud to be a part of today's episode where Kevin DeShazo will be talking about leadership and culture development. We have a great partnership with Kevin and love the stuff that he does. So as always, if you guys have any construction, sports construction needs, visit mammothturf.com, and I'd love to help you out.
Thank you, Brian. And we'll hear next from John Velastro, Business Development for CEI Engineering Sports Facilities Team. John.
Okay, thank you guys for having us. This is our second year to participate. We are a full service engineering firm. We are not contractors, but we do work with contractors and architects and turf firms. We're the important people because we do things that are behind the scenes. And one thing that we specialize in is sports facilities. We have a sports facilities team, and we do things for you or help you when you do your needs assessment, your planning, your budgeting, preliminary site plans, all the specs. So when you are out there doing things, you're getting apples to apples and knowing that you're going to get the best product. So again, if we can do anything for you, there's going to be a link. We're going to be getting with you and to do a short survey, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Again, if you're doing anything in the next 1 to 3 years, we think we have the skill set to help you guys in the future. So again, thank you for having us, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Brian and Jeff, and thanks again to Mammoth Sports Construction and CEI Engineering for their support of BOSCA Presents. To introduce today's guest, please welcome the founder of the business of small college athletics, Jim Abbott. Jim.
Thanks, John. Just quickly want to say thanks to everybody for joining today. My intention is to continue to have a session every month that would be available. With that in mind, I really welcome your feedback and input. So if you have ideas on a topic that you need help with or that you'd like to see discussed, if you want to maybe be involved in leading one of these sessions, then I hope that you'll reach out to me. BOSCA is designed for small college athletic departments, and naturally we're in a time like none of us has ever faced, but despite those challenges, I think that it's critical for every one of us that we continue to try to grow and get better at what we do. So I really encourage you to reach out to me, and your feedback would be appreciated. And I encourage you to, however you do it, to keep looking for those opportunities to grow and get better in the profession. I'm excited today. A lot of these sessions, we talk about specific topics, and today we do that as well, but it's not going to be so much about the bread and butter of of how you hire and fire and the things we do in our department, as much as it is leadership and culture. The second year that we had the BOSCA workshop, I asked Kevin DeShazo to come and present. And Kevin is still a young guy, but he was really a young guy back then. And he's right here in Oklahoma City. And so he's been involved with our group for a while, and frankly has just kind of grown and gone from there. He's a 2-time best-selling author. He is a partner with Culture Wins, which is associated with the leadership development firm Giant. But he's presented on more than 300 campuses and been involved in virtually every other type of professional development that's available in collegiate athletics. So with that, Kevin, I will say thank you for the time that you're going to share with us today, and I'll turn it over to you.
And Jim, appreciate you. And again, it's fun to see, knowing you for about a decade now and seeing what BOSCA has become, and even talking to you the year before it launched, when you had the idea of it, when you were dreaming about it, and to see not only did you build it, but what you built it into is really fun and really inspiring, and I know making this industry better. So it's certainly an honor to be a part of it. And again, appreciate the sponsors, especially Mammoth and Brian. I know those guys really well. I know they're not just about building stadiums; they're about helping people win in those stadiums and helping those leaders get better in the long run. So I appreciate the sponsors for helping this happen. And I see a lot of familiar faces, which is fun. I see a lot of friends on this call, and so we're going to do. It's a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of application, right? I love spending time at the 30,000 foot view of like giving you a vision of what could be, but I also want to show how that actually happens, right? So we want to have a little mix of that. And it's around my latest book, and it's called Keep Chopping Wood. And so that's going to be the topic. And I'll show some slides here in just a second. We'll walk through some things. But before that, I just want to give you where the book came from, where the idea came from, and why it matters to you as a leader, for your team, for your organization, for your department. And so it was in January when I got the idea for this book. I live, like Jim said, live in Oklahoma City, just down the road from him. It was a cold Saturday night in January in Oklahoma City. And I live in a historic neighborhood, and my neighbor actually has a wood burning fireplace. So I'm sitting there late on a Saturday night at about 10 o'clock, and I can smell the wood burning in his fireplace. And my brain just isn't real normal. Something about me, just like, I wonder what the process of wood getting from forest to fireplace is. And so I'm sitting there at 10 o'clock Saturday night and Googling that process, trying to figure out what that looks like. And I realized that the wood that he was putting in his fireplace was not new wood. Now, one, my neighbor is like 70 years old, so he wasn't out chopping wood ever. But the wood that he put into his fireplace is not new wood. It was not freshly cut, freshly chopped wood. The wood was a year old. The process of chopping wood is that you have to cut it and then let it sit for 9 to 12 months, sometimes longer, so that it can dry out, so that it can season, so that it can be prepared, so that it can be useful. Because freshly cut wood isn't useful. If you throw that wood into your fireplace, it's going to get really smoky. It's going to cause some severe damage. There's a good chance it's not going to warm your house. Well, it will warm your house. It'll warm it by burning it down. It'll damage your fireplace and just catch your whole house on fire. Not the kind of warmth that you're looking for, but that wood isn't ready. It's not useful for the fire. It's not useful or ready for its purpose yet. You have to go out 9 months ahead of time, which means that wood for January was chopped, March or April, maybe even February. And going out, doing the work then, knowing that there's no real payoff that day, right? You're out in the forest chopping wood. It could be 50 degrees. Like, why am I even, it's not cold. I don't need this wood today, but it's not about today, right? It's about showing up and doing the work today so that you're ready for tomorrow. So that when winter hits, you're not sitting there thinking, oh man, I wish I had firewood. I wish I had done the work back in February or March or in April. It's getting to that time and saying, no, I'm ready. I'm prepared for this moment because I did the work. I had the vision of warmth, right, in the winter. Well, that vision required that I do some work today. And so it's about this unsexy process of becoming great, right? Like the work isn't sexy. The process isn't sexy. Like we look at trophies and we look at sales and we look at production and execution. Like we win all the awards, but like the work gets us to the end. The work gets us to the reward. And it's showing up and doing that work when it's inconvenient, when you don't feel like it, when it doesn't make any sense, because you know it's about tomorrow. And it's a process. It takes time, right? We live in this drive-through culture. Yesterday, I was down at Oklahoma Baptist talking with their student athletes and coaches. And as I left Oklahoma City to drive to Shawnee, I mean, I could have driven through and got food. I could have driven through, got money, could have driven through, got medicine, could have gone to the dry cleaners and gotten my clothes. I could get just about anything. I bought a car sitting on my couch from my phone and had it delivered to my house. Like, we live in a drive-through convenience culture, which in some levels is awesome. But when it comes to doing anything great or unlocking your potential or building a championship culture, like, it's a process. There is no shortcut, right? We're constantly looking for like the shortcut to greatness. Like, the work is the shortcut. It's you show up each day and you do the work, and it's consistency and it's commitment. And the more you do it, the better you get, right? It's not that the work gets easier, you just get better at it. And so it's this idea, like, what kind of person are you? Are you the kind of person that shows up? You can live two kinds of lives. You can live a life of convenience or a life of commitment. All right, convenience is like, I don't really feel like it today. It's cold. I'm tired. I worked hard last week. I'm just not feeling it today. That's convenience, right? But commitment is saying, no, I want this. I have this vision in mind. I want to be a champion. I want to be healthy. I want to be a better leader. I want to be whatever it is. Well, I'm committed to that goal. I'm committed to that vision. That means I'm committed to the work today, which means I show up each day, commit to the process, and you keep chopping wood so that you're ready when the moment comes, right? You don't just wake up and be great, right? Greatness is boring. You wake up and you do the work every single day. Consistency is the differentiator, right? It's the separator. Anybody can do good work for a day. Can you do good work every day? Show up today and do the work. Show up tomorrow and do the work. Show up the next day and do the work. So that's the idea. The overarching theme of the day is like, what does it look like to have a vision and to unlock your potential as you run towards that vision? So I'm going to share a couple slides with you. And again, if you have questions, just throw them into the chat. I know John will interrupt me as needed. And then I'll go fairly short, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end as well. I'm happy to break some things down for you. So here's kind of the vision formula, so to speak. All right, so you have this vision, this direction that you're going, and we're going to go into each of these areas in a little more detail. But you have this vision of who you want to become, and again, this could be a personal vision, right? I want to run a marathon. I want to lose 30 pounds. I want to whatever. But also a team or organizational cultural vision. We want to be a championship level team. And I would say with your vision, and we'll dig into this in a second, don't get super specific on things that you can't control. Like, say we want to win the championship. Well, number one, every team wakes up at the beginning of the season and wants to win the championship. You can't control whether or not you win the championship. You can control your work ethic, you can control your effort, you can control your commitment, but you can do everything right and still not win the championship. That doesn't mean you were a failure. But did you put yourself in position to win? Are you consistently putting yourself in position to win? That's what it means, like, to build a championship culture, is to consistently give yourself a chance to compete at the highest level, to be on the right stages. So you have this vision. Well, that vision requires that you have certain habits, right? You don't just get the vision. Visions are great. Everyone loves to talk about vision, but in order to get that vision, you have to have a certain standard of habits, certain standard of behavior. Well, if you want the right habits, you've got to have the right culture. Culture shapes habits. The culture you have determines the kind of habits that will be created, right? So for example, if I want to get healthy, or if I want to lose weight, but my family and personal culture is we eat out all the time, all the snacks in our house are really unhealthy, well, my habits aren't, I'm not going to develop healthy habits, because that's the exception, not the norm, right? So you have to have a culture that encourages and empowers the right kind of habits that will get you closer to your vision. Well, leaders define culture. So if you need better culture, you need better leadership. And over all that, you have to have belief. Like, belief is this book was going to be about belief. The next one will probably be about belief, because it's been this idea I've been stuck on for about a year and a half. Just the power of belief and what that unlocks within us, what that unlocks within our teams, what that unlocks within our organizations, families, communities, cities, all these things. belief is the driver. If you don't believe in it, you're never going to pursue it. And so I want to walk through kind of each of these a little bit and talk about it. Again, think about how this applies to you as an individual, but also you as a team and as an organization. So what is vision? Again, getting from clouds to dirt. Vision is just a desired reality. I want this. And some things you can get specific, some things it's more of a person that you are becoming, a culture that you are becoming, a team organization that you are becoming. It's not necessarily an achievement. It's this is what we are running toward. Do you even have a vision? If you don't have a vision, you have no reason to wake up in the morning, right? You don't wake up with purpose. When there is no vision, people perish, right? It's like you have to have a purpose that wakes you up, that drives you, that gets you out of bed, that moves you forward, that drives your actions. And I think most people feel really stuck because they don't have a vision, right? They don't really know what they're running toward. And with that, I want to talk about this. This is what we call the change equation. And so a lot of people are really dissatisfied. And when your dissatisfaction is above your vision, there's bitterness, there's resentment, there's hopelessness. And that's where I think a lot of people live, because they're really dissatisfied, but they don't have a vision. And so there's nothing to like channel that dissatisfaction into. When your vision is greater than your dissatisfaction, then it turns to motivation, right? It's like, man, I'm really unhealthy, but I have a vision of what a healthy version of me looks like. I know what I'm running. I'm not there yet. I'm not happy with where I am, but I know where I'm going. I have a clear vision. I can take this dissatisfaction and put it into action. So where is your level of dissatisfaction in relationship to your vision? And for some of it, the dissatisfaction, you also have to talk about just how severe is that dissatisfaction? Like, let's say 1 out of 10. If your dissatisfaction is like a 2 out of 10, you're not really dissatisfied. You're just annoyed. And I would say just stop complaining and go to work. But if you're really dissatisfied, then let's do something about it. So you have your level of dissatisfaction. You have the vision that's bigger than the dissatisfaction, this vision that you're running toward. Well, then what? Visions can seem overwhelming, right? I'm going to climb Mount Everest. Well, that seems like a big deal. I'm going to run a marathon. Well, I've never run. And so we get overwhelmed with the size of the vision. And so we do nothing. Well, break it down. What's the natural next step? If you want to run a marathon, well, first figure out how to run a mile. You can do that today, or maybe it's a half mile, right? Whatever that looks like. Break it down to the natural next step. What's the one thing you can do today to move forward, to get closer to your vision? Progress is progress, right? Baby steps are still steps. So don't beat yourself up for the pace of progress. What can you do today to take one step? And then I think the real key to this are allies. Who's going to walk alongside you as you're pursuing this vision? It's really hard to pursue a vision alone. It's really difficult. I was talking with these student athletes last night. It's like, you want to be a championship level basketball player, and you need to go to the gym. You're wanting to go to the gym and get some shots up, maybe work out, but your roommates are playing video games. Well, they're not on the same journey as you. And so you're going to default back to their behavior. You need allies. You need people who are locked arms, running in the same direction as you to keep you accountable, to cheer you on as you pursue this vision. So if your dissatisfaction times vision times natural next step plus allies, then you'll overcome the resistance that is natural with pursuing this vision. Because if you have a vision and you're running toward it, it's going to be difficult, right? Adversity is part of the process. Doubts are part of the process. Difficulties are part of the process. And so if you don't have the people alongside you and a clear vision, that resistance is going to win every time. And then how do you handle that adversity? Because we are a culture of complaining. Every time something goes wrong, we act like the world is working against us. And this is really bad this year. And I know this is a difficult year. Like I was a public speaker for a living, and then events no longer happen. So I get it. It's a weird year. But every time something happens, like, oh, 2020 again. No, like, let's change our mindset. We can't control circumstances. We just can't. What's going to happen in life is going to happen. You can't control other people. You can't control the industry. You can't control the economy. You can't control this virus. You can't control competitors. You can't control donors. You can control your perspective. So we spend all this time and energy wasted on things that we can't control, on the million things that we can control. Well, focus on the one thing that you can control, and that's you, your perspective. Your circumstances plus your perspective determine your experience. If you have a better perspective, suddenly you're going to have a better experience, even in difficult seasons. I saw a quote recently. I don't remember who said it. I think it was Mark Twain, but who knows? He said, I've had a whole lot of problems in life, but none of them were real. Right? We manufacture these issues in our mind because we have an unhealthy perspective. You have the right perspective, you can get through anything. And perspective is your mindset, and mindset is a muscle, right? The more you work it out, the stronger it gets. The more you ignore it, the weaker it gets. You're not just going to wake up with a great perspective, right? Just like anything else, it's chopping wood. You get a little bit better tomorrow. You wake up tomorrow and choose to have a good attitude. You fail a little bit, that's okay. Wake up the next day, choose to have a better attitude. Over time, you'll realize like you just got a good attitude. A year from now, you're like, man, good attitude is just part of who I am because I've chosen that day after day after day after day. I've chosen to have a better perspective. So we got our vision in place. Now we need the right habits. Again, I can say I want to run a marathon, but do I have the habits of a marathon runner, of a runner, period? It's not, don't just talk about it, be about it. Everyone loves to talk about vision. Everyone loves to talk about culture. Are you doing the work? This vision of who you want to become, of who you want your team to become, demands something of you today. It demands a certain standard. It demands certain behaviors. It demands certain values. And so to be honest, to look at your habits and say, yeah, if I can see your habits, I can show you what you're going to be 5 years from now. I can show you what you're going to be 10 years from now. Your habits determine your future. So it doesn't matter what your vision is, it's what your habits are in relation to that vision. So look at your habits, say, what path are they leading you down? Are your habits today getting you closer or further away from your vision? And it could be even good habits, but are they the right habits? All right, because good habits aren't always the best habits. And so do you have the right habits to move you closer to your vision? There's been a lot of talk about habits over the last 2 years. There's an amazing book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Highly recommend it. It's a top 5 book for me. It just breaks down the science of developing better habits. Habits are so critical, right? We can talk about vision all day long, but if we're not going to change who we're becoming and change how we think and live and speak and operate, that vision is just a hope. And eventually that vision is it's not going to be a hope. It's going to be a source of bitterness because we're never moving towards it because we're not changing our habits. So I would think for today, think of 2 things you need to start doing and 2 things that you need to stop doing. All right. So it's not just about adding better habits. It's about removing habits that are moving you further away from the vision. So what are your habits today? How healthy, how strong, how productive are they? If you want the right habits, you need to have the right culture. I mentioned this earlier, right? If I'm trying to get healthy, but my family culture doesn't encourage healthy habits, I'm never going to get healthy. So think about the culture for yourself, but think about the culture on your team. What kind of habits is your culture encouraging? Everyone loves to talk about the standard, right? This is the standard. This is who we are. And yet you have people living down here and some people living even further down. Well, that's your standard. Your standard isn't what you talk about. Your standard is what you allow. And if you're allowing it, that means your culture is allowing people to live down here. You want them to live up here, but you've created a culture where it's acceptable for people to live down here. You don't hold people accountable. Maybe you don't live the standard yourself. You have to create a culture where those habits that we talked about are the norm, not the exception. Because if the habits are the exception, we're going to choose them like 1 out of 20 times. We're always going to default to an easier path. But if you've created a culture where the standard is really the standard, where excellence is really the habit, then that's what people are going to choose every day. I was talking with a women's field hockey coach on the East Coast with a program that we're working with. And she wanted rest to be a habit for their team. She's like, we need to be better rested. But she knew the girls weren't just going to be better rested, right? Like you can talk about it, but she knew it wasn't just going to magically happen. So what did she do? She changed their practice time to practice in the mornings. so that the girls would go to bed earlier and be better rested. So she created a culture that made rest the standard habit. And you could see if the people, if they weren't rested, right? If they weren't living up to that standard, it was obvious. But she changed their practice schedule to fit that habit, to fit that value, to make that the standard, not the exception. Because they practiced at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, girls could be up till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning doing whatever. There is no way to hold them accountable to that standard, to that habit. But when she changed the practice time, it's like, nope, rest became the standard. Rest became the norm. So do you have a culture that encourages the right habits? If your people aren't giving the best effort, if they're just doing enough to get by, if they're just in autopilot, just going through the motions, which is where it feels like most people are in life, they're just going through the motions. We can get mad at them, or we can say, wait, what about our culture is actually allowing that to happen? What about our culture is encouraging that? And what are we going to do to change it? That's where leadership comes in. Leaders define culture. If you want a better culture, you have to become a better leader, period. Now, culture is communicated from the top down, but it's built from the bottom up, right? So it's on you to communicate it. It's on the team to build it, but it's on you to hold them accountable to building it. So you have to think, what's it like to be on the other side of your leadership? Based on the way that you lead, based on the way that you communicate, based on the way that you operate, what version of you are people getting? Are they getting a version of you that they want to follow? Are they getting a version of you that's shaping a healthy culture? Leaders define, and you're not going to get a healthy culture without a healthy team. Excuse me, you're not going to create a healthy culture if you're not a healthy leader. You're not going to get a positive culture if you're not a positive leader. All right? So if you're consistently operating out of anxiety and negativity and stress and exhaustion, well, that's the culture that you're creating for your team. You set the standard, you set the tone. So if you want your culture to be up here, you've got to look in the mirror and say, well, where am I at? How am I contributing to this culture? I need to be up here. And the way we would break culture down is looking, and some of you are familiar with this, it's what we call the support challenge matrix. And some people live down here in this culture of domination. It's high challenge and low support. It's crazy high expectations, no relationship, no encouragement, no support, no investment, no resources. And it's exhausting. It's a culture of silence. Right? It's a culture that you might win there for a season, but you're not going to win there for 5 seasons. You're certainly not going to win there for 20 seasons. You can get by with this once, but it burns people out. It drives people away. It's not a culture that's life-giving. And that doesn't mean you're a jerk, by the way. You might be, but usually it's just overpowering people. It's usually insecure leadership. And sometimes just it's just a lack of self-awareness. They just don't realize what it's like to be on the other side of them. They're not trying to be this way. It's their nature. It's their natural tendency, their personality, but they're not trying to be jerks. They've never looked in the mirror to think about, man, do I have broccoli in my teeth that's causing me to undermine my influence with my team? Ultimately, this culture of domination leads to this culture over here, low challenge and low support. When people are like, man, whatever, just tell me what to do and when. I don't care. I still get paid, right? Just meeting at 10, great. Okay, well, we'll just do whatever you want to do. I don't need to bring any ideas. We're going to do what you want to do anyway, right? There's no ownership. There's no passion. There's no purpose. It's a paycheck culture, not a purpose culture. And a culture of domination always leads to a culture of abdication. There's just no energy. There's no life. I see this a lot in endings, right? If maybe a coach, for example, is like, hey, this is my last year. They just kind of throw their hands up. Yeah, whatever. This season it's my last. I'm not really concerned about it. Or if you're going to move on to a different position and you've turned in your 2 weeks notice, or maybe you say, hey, I'm going to be out in 3 months. We just stop giving our best. We tend to not end things very well. We abdicate towards the end. And then we just leave a bad taste in people's mouths. Like, man, they were great, but all of a sudden, all of this good work they did, they undid it in a matter of 2 weeks because they just didn't show up at the end. Some of us, our leadership style is this culture of protection. It's high support and low challenge. And it sounds great to protect your people. What you're really doing is holding them back. It's too much care, too much support, too much encouragement, too much love. And I know that sounds like, wait, you can do that? You can, if it's not met with the right amount of challenge, the right amount of accountability, the right amount of expectations. Because what happens in this culture of protection is that people are continually doing the wrong thing and never being held accountable for it. Because you want to be liked. You don't want to ruffle feathers. You don't want to rock the boat. It's like, no, that's not, you're not being a jerk. You're actually caring enough to hold people to a higher standard, to say, hey, I'm not going to let you live down here. You're up here. This is who you are. And I don't like having these conversations, but I'm not going to let you stay down here. Do you realize what you're doing and the impact that that's having? Because accountability isn't something that you do to people. It's something that you do for people. And in a culture of protection, there's just no accountability. It's a whole lot of love. Like people are like, man, we just really care a lot about each other, but nobody's actually getting better because hard conversations aren't taking place. The best leaders have learned how to calibrate high support and high challenge, to say, this is the standard, this is the expectation, and it's high, but I'm going to give you everything you need to get there. This is what I expect from you, but I'm going to give you time. I'm going to give you encouragement. I'm going to give you support. I'm going to give you resources. I'm going to give you investment. Now the person across from you has to respond to that, but it's on us as a leader to say, man, what's it like to be on the other side of us? Because to liberate people is to build them up, right? To dominate people is to hold them down, to prevent them from getting better. To protect them is to hold them back. And to liberate them is to say, no, I'm gonna create a culture of empowerment where you can actually unlock your potential. And when you're doing that for everybody on your team, magic starts to happen. Because the reality is, like, everybody on your team needs this, but it looks a little bit different based on personality. Because what tends to happen is you'll get a couple leaders and they'll say, well, I'll be a good cop and I'll be bad cop and she'll be good cop. Well, no, we don't need to be cops. Just be leaders. Both of you be great leaders. That's what would be great. And this looks different for every personality, right? The way I'm going to bring support and challenge is going to be different than somebody else because we're wired differently. So it's not about being robots. It's about understanding your personality, understanding how you naturally operate, and saying, how do I get into this quadrant consistently? Because the issue is that you are naturally protecting or dominating. Nobody's naturally here, by the way. It's like, if you're like, oh no, I live here, maybe you've learned how to do that, but nobody is naturally here. Nobody's naturally here either. Most of us live and protect or dominate. But the issue is that we're all of these things during the day, and everybody's getting a different version of us. And so they're like, oh, am I getting good Kevin today, or am I getting stressed out Kevin? And people don't know what to expect. So to be consistent in every circle of influence, to say, in every interaction I'm going into, I'm like, how can I bring support and challenge for this person? How can I get out of my own way? What support and what challenge do they need from me? Leaders define culture. So think about what your culture is. I would encourage you to take this slide. If you're on campus or however you can do it, like, draw this on a whiteboard. You could teach it to your team in 3 minutes. Walk out of the room and have them scatter plot you. Because you have an idea of where you think you are, but how does your team receive you? And then you get to have a conversation. Well, where do you guys feel like I'm bringing too much challenge? Where do you feel like I'm bringing too much support or not enough support? And then to make this the standard of your leadership and the standard of your culture. So what is your leadership like, and how is it contributing to the culture? And the last thing is this idea of belief. And belief can be this fluffy thing. But to me, like, if you don't believe in the vision, if you don't believe in the people around you, if you don't believe in yourself, you're out. Right? Belief looks for a way forward. Doubt looks for a way out. If I believe in the vision, I'm going to commit to it. It'll be hard. It'll be difficult. There will be adversity and obstacles and doubts and all this stuff. But if I believe in it, I'm in. If I doubt, I'm like, I don't really know if that's possible. As soon as there's difficulty, as soon as adversity hits, you're looking for that off ramp. Like, I knew that wasn't going to work anyway, and you bail. But if you believe in the vision, you fight for it, you commit to it. If you believe in the people around you, like, every leader I know is like, man, if I just had a better team, well, make the team better. Because what's going to happen is, like, you could fire everyone on your team and hire all new people, and you're going to have the same problems, because the problem is probably you and your leadership and the culture that you're creating. So to believe the best in the people around you, say, man, recalibrate their potential, how you see them, because how you see them determines how you lead them. So if you don't believe that the team you have is capable, they're never going to be. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're not going to give them your best, so they're never going to get to this level. But if you believe in them, you fight for them, you develop them, you invest in them. And then you have to believe in yourself. It's not an ego thing, but to say like, I'm not made to be average. I'm not made to just go through the motions. Like I was made for significance. I was made for impact. That doesn't mean you're made to make $1 million, have an amazing house and nice cars. I mean, have impact with people. You were made to have an impact. You were made, like there's greatness already within you. When you believe in that, you start to unlock that. And then that multiplies into those around you. But when you show up with doubt, like who wants to follow a leader that's full of doubt? I don't. That person's never going to change the world. They're not going to change the team. They're not going to change themselves. They're not going to change anything except their team, because they're all going to bail because they don't want to be around that person. Belief changes everything. Everything that's ever been created in the history of the world started with belief. Somebody believed it was possible. A lot of people talked about it being possible. Somebody believed enough that it was possible, went and created it. Like the universities that you work at, right? At some point, somebody believed that university could and should exist, and they created it. The companies that you're a part of, somebody believed that that need existed. There need to be a company for that. They created it. Buildings, cars, clothes, whatever, right? You can get as simple or as crazy with that as you want to. Belief drives behavior. Where is your level of belief? And how is that impacting you? We either rise to our level of belief or we fall to our level of unbelief. So that's the general idea, right? It's like we show up, we have this vision, we commit to the process. We say, like, if I want to get here, there's a process to get from point A to point B, or from point A to point Z. There's a process to it. We have to commit to that process and then show up each day and commit to doing the work, commit to changing our habits, commit to changing our culture, commit to changing our leadership, our level of belief. You show up each day and you chop the wood. You show up each day and you do the work. And then all of a sudden, when you get to that moment, you're like, wait a minute, I'm here, I'm ready. When crisis hits, you're ready to deal with that adversity. You overcome that adversity, right? When adversity hits, it's too late. Too many people, when COVID hit, like, oh man, what about our culture? We got to stick together. We got to communicate. It's like, oh man, it's too late. You don't say, guys, let's stick together when the world is burning down around you. Because you're like, guys, we got to stick together. Like, stick together. Like, he's looking out for him. She's looking out for her. I'm looking out for me. Good luck. And all these little fractures that were there, or little cracks, are suddenly massive fractures. They're huge gaps. But if you've done the work before, like adversity is going to hit every team, by the way. Right? Adversity is not a reflection of your culture. How you handle it is. Adversity hits everybody, every team, every organization, every leader, every culture. Adversity is just part of the process. But if you've built the right culture, if you've done the work, if you've chopped the wood, when that adversity hits, and then that leader's like, guys, we got to stick together. The team's like, that's right, we are together. He's in it for me. He's in it for me. I'm in it for them. Let's lock arms and let's run forward together. It's not going to be easy. It may not be pretty, but we are in it together. So what are you doing now to make that happen, to build relationships, to build trust, to communicate? Because these things don't happen on accident. But the process of becoming great, the process of unlocking your potential, the potential of your team, potential of your organization, is about the consistency and doing the work each day. The vision is great, but it's only a hope unless you're committed to showing up each day and doing the work. Any questions? And one thing I do want to show you guys real quick. Let's see if this works. There we go. So some of the tools that we talked about, this is a free platform, so I'm not selling you anything, although I know some of your departments already use this platform. Some of the tools that we've talked about, it's a free platform. Go to that link, giant.tv/culturewins. It's free forever, not just it used to be 30 days. It's free forever. Google, as an organization, just decided to put every data center they have around the globe. They're putting all their people on this platform. They're doing a paid version. Over 500 hours of content on self-awareness, on communication, team exercises, work-life balance, boatload of stuff, and it's free. So highly recommend you go check that out. Use that to help yourself, but to help your team as well. But any questions?
Thanks, Kevin. Folks, if you would please use the chat box to send your questions, and I will read them out to Kevin directly. Kevin, let me kind of start things off here. You went through several different steps here in talking about culture, building vision, consistency, and such. From a broad standpoint, what would you say are some of the best consistency habits to build in the small college leadership, athletics leadership positions?
I think this habit of mindset, because it just shapes everything, and it's really easy to get taken out by circumstances, to get taken out by adversity, to get taken out by just the busyness that pops up, because we're all busy, right? We're all busy. I think for me, I've realized I'm not going to be who I want to be if I don't make a habit of mindset really critical. It's like, for me, it's an every morning thing. Like I'm not a big routine guy. I'm about as undisciplined of a human as you'll find. But I've made a morning routine like the one thing in life that I'm really disciplined with. So each morning, like I wake up, I've got this routine. I read a little bit. I've got an identity statement that I put on my phone. It's actually part of the book where I talked about making an identity statement to remind myself of who I am, what I'm about, what I'm here for. And then I've started lately, even adding to that, there's an app, I think it's free, I'm not sure. It's called One Day. And every morning in this app, I write down or type in 10 things that I'm grateful for. Because I know I'm not going to be in the right mindset on accident. And so I've made this habit of having the right mindset really, really intentional for me. So I think mindset is a really critical habit. And I don't know if this is a habit, but self-awareness of consistently examining yourself. Like, man, how did I show up today? Like, where did I do really well and why? Where am I consistently having difficulty and why? Because the more that you can understand yourself, the more that you can lead yourself, the more influence you have with others. Like I've never seen anybody complain about a healthy leader be like, man, she's just always working on herself. Like she's just always trying to learn more about herself and get better. Like nobody ever complains about that, right? Those are the leaders that we want to follow. But I can list quite a few leaders that people sit around and wonder, like, man, has he like ever considered what it's like to be around him? Does he ever work on himself? And so I think self-awareness is again, an unsexy thing, but a really critical thing in terms of a habit.
Knowing that habits are difficult to build, you can get started with a habit, but then you'll have an off day. That'll become an off week. Let's say it becomes an off month. What would you recommend in regards to reorienting that mindset, not letting yourself get too beat up about it, and giving yourself permission, if you will, to acknowledge that lapse has occurred? How would you recommend somebody kind of come out of that and back into that consistency habit?
I think it's about expectations, honestly. I think we put way too heavy of expectations on ourselves, and they're just unrealistic. And so you're going to fail. And I don't even like using that word failure. Like, you're going to trip up, you're going to fall short because you are a human. And so to think through, like, a great example, and we have a tool called the expectation scale. So I'll just put this up as I kind of talk about it a little bit. Think about first of the year, right? Everyone's going to go to the gym every single day. It's like, man, I'm going to the gym every day this year. That's what I'm going to do. And you didn't go to the gym. You haven't been to the gym in 5 years, but somehow now you're going to go to the gym 365 straight days. Well, you make it the first 3 or 4 days. And then day 5, you're tired or you oversleep or whatever, and you don't go. And then all of a sudden you beat yourself up. Like, oh, I knew I couldn't do this. I don't even know why I tried. This was so ridiculous. Healthy is not who I am. I'm not a gym person. And then you never go again for the rest of the year. It's like, you just went 4 times. That's more times than you went all of last year. That's a win. All right, 4 times in 4 days, that's a win. You're going to mess up. And so having realistic expectations for yourself, don't burden yourself with unrealistic expectations. Say, hey, I'm going to go to the gym more this year. I'm going to go to the gym this year. Maybe the goal is just once a week. Well, that's a win. That seems like not a lot, but when you've not been going to the gym, once is a big deal. And then as that becomes more of your routine, maybe then you can add 2 days, right? But make it something where you can start off small so you can get easy wins. And realize, like, you miss a day, great, that's okay. Like you don't need to beat yourself up over it. Say, great, I had an off day. I don't need, like you said, is a great point. If you don't lead yourself well, an off day becomes an off week, becomes an off month, becomes an off quarter, becomes an off year. If you have realistic expectations and learn to lead yourself better, you said, that's all right. I missed a day. No big deal. I'm still good. Everything's fine. I can go again tomorrow. And so being able to coach yourself well, like it's interesting because you would coach other people differently. Like let's say your kid or someone on your team, like they're going to go to the gym every day. You say, oh, that's a big goal. Like maybe walk that back a little bit. But let's say they committed to that. They're like, no, this is what I'm going to do. Okay, great. Day 3 or day 4, they miss. You say, dude, it's all right. All good. Like, look, you already went 3 days. Like you're doing great. Get back on the horse tomorrow. No big deal. You're not a failure. You're doing fine. That's how we would coach others. And so we have to learn to be our best coach and say, hey, that's all right. You had an off day. Doesn't mean you're a failure. Don't turn that into quitting.
Again, let me remind folks, if you have any questions for Kevin, do please put them here in the chat box and I will get them to Kevin. Kevin, let me go back to that quadrant slide that you put up about the different cultures, the expectations, and the challenges. Sometimes when somebody comes into a leadership position, they're inheriting a culture that's not theirs. And let's say you're coming in and you're inheriting the abdication culture or the domination culture. You know that you have a vision for that liberation culture. You know that you want to be in that space. What are some practical thoughts around how would you approach a culture that you've inherited, that you know you want to move in the right direction, but what are some practical thoughts about, okay, how do you actually start to make that happen?
Yeah, I think it's about relationships, right? I think a lot of people, they come into this role, they come into a new school and with good intent, like I'm going to change the culture. Right? I know it may not be in a great spot. Then you may get there and it's even worse than you thought it was, right? Culture of domination or abdication, whatever it may be. You're like, I'm going to turn this around in the next 3 months, right? My first 100 days is going to be about changing the culture. It's not going to be about changing the culture. You would love it to be that. It's got to be about relationships. You can't change the culture until you build trust and relationships, because the culture will change when everyone else starts to buy into it, right? You can talk about it and beat people over the head about it all day long. It's not going to happen until you get those allies, until you figure out like who are your culture influencers. And in the book, I called them culture captains. Like, who are the people who are actually really critical to the culture? And that doesn't mean they are quote unquote leaders by title, right? They're just people that have influence within the culture. Who are those people? Identify them, and you'll identify them as you start to have conversations with people. And you get those people on board, say, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. Here's my goal. I know it's going to take some time. How do you think this is going to be received? How do you think we do this? What do you think are going to be our roadblocks? What are going to be the obstacles? And so you get a group of people who are doing that with you, right? That way it's not all on your shoulders. You've got people who will run alongside you to help change the culture. Because if you get the right people, right, culture changes when you get 12% of people. 12% of people shifts a culture either way, good or bad, right? 12% of people can shift a culture. So if you get the right 12%, then all of a sudden you can get everyone else on board, because you get the people that everyone listens to and say, man, she's on board, I'm in. It's like, because people are going to naturally be skeptical. No matter how amazing you are or how good your intent is, people are always skeptical of change, even if they don't like their current reality, right? People will sit in an unhealthy reality because change is harder. And so for you to come in and want to create change, it's going to ruffle some feathers, even though you have all the right intent and even though they know change needs to happen. But when you get the right people on board who trust you, who believe in you, who can help you communicate that vision and that culture, then you can slowly start to shift things. So I think giving yourself permission to take time, right? A healthy expectation, realistic expectation. It's not going to happen overnight, but focus on those subculture leaders, those culture captains that will help you get everybody else on board.
So along those same lines, we do have a question here. And this is, I think, very related. How do you handle an employee who continues to not buy into your vision when others have?
Yep. Great question. There are resistant people and there are responsive people. And resistant people are toxic to culture and need to go. If they are consistently resistant, they need to go. You give people a chance, right? Say, hey, here's where we're going. Listen to their issues, listen to their questions, right? You can't just demand change from people. You have to earn that change. You have to earn that trust. And so when people fall short of the standard that you're trying to create, having a conversation like, hey, tell me what happened here. We're trying to go this direction. It feels like you're either against it or you're trying to hold us back. You're not on board. Walk me through, right? Give them a chance to explain, because there could be insecurity, there could be self-preservation, right? Your job as a leader is to fight for their highest possible good. That means giving them a chance to get on board, to ask questions, to test you, to receive all those with maturity and humility, right? To not get defensive when they ask questions. And say, hey, what am I missing here? We'd love to have you on board. We think you're a key part of this. It feels like it's not happening. What do we need to do to change that? And so walk through that process with them. But if they are consistently resistant, it's like, you got to go, right? It's like, let's say a football player runs across the middle and wide open pass, and you hit him across the middle, hits him in the hands, and he drops it. It's like, oh, my bad. Like, no worries, right? Everyone makes a mistake, not a big deal. Next series, same thing, cuts across the middle, hits him right in the hands, drops it. My bad. Like, all right, man, that's twice. Like, let's create some change, right? It's people have to acknowledge their behavior and commit to changing the behavior. So next series down the field, same thing, hits him in the hands, drops it. My bad. It's like, no, you're just not good and you're not trying to get better. You're out. We're going to put somebody else in who's going to help us win. You've given them a chance. They've not committed to changing their behavior. And so I think the other piece is, if they acknowledge their self-preservation, their insecurity, that they've not been on board, whatever it is, like, man, I get it, all good, but let's be this person going forward. I'm committed to fighting for you, and give them a chance to change. Because too often we have a difficult conversation with someone and we keep reminding them of their issues instead of giving them a chance to change and grow. Like, change takes time. And so for most people, they're not just going to flip that switch overnight. So give them a chance to change. But at some point, there's got to be, and there's no magic, time frame. I think you'll know it as a leader. But at some point, it's like, man, we love you, but it's best for you and for our team if you're just not here. That actually is fighting for their highest good, because this isn't a place, it is not a place that they want to be. And that's you fighting for the highest good of your team. Say, hey, this person doesn't want to live up to our standard. It's not right for us to have them here. Right. And so that's never fun, but that's leadership.
All right. If there are no additional questions, then I will go ahead and thank Kevin for his time and expertise in sharing this presentation. Thank you so much for being here, Kevin. And I am going to, if you would like to, oops, I'm sorry, I did this last time. And if you would like to connect with Kevin, you can get a hold of him using this information that should be up on your screen right now. He'll be happy to connect and continue the conversation. So to wrap things up, let me turn it over to Jim Abbott for some final remarks. Jim.
Well, first of all, Kevin, thanks so much for participating today. I think I probably speak for everyone who's here when I say that I wish we had 7 or 8 or 12 more hours to talk about this. I think culture and leadership and how we get the most out of our people is so critical to success. So I'm grateful to you. I want to thank Mammoth and CEI again for making this possible, and really just to reiterate to everybody that perspective is so important right now. We're all challenged. We're all a little uncertain. But I know that, Kevin, you've reminded me of some, that my perspective and my determination each day to show up in a positive way is critical, not only to my success, but to those people around me. So again, we will look forward to doing this again next month. Please reach out to me if you have other thoughts on topics you'd like to discuss. And thanks to everybody for participating. Thanks very much.